The next call is a split call. Denise Roach, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise to take a call for the Greens on the New Zealand Tariff Free Trade Agreement between New Zealand and the Republic of Korea Amendment Bill. Mr Speaker, we will be opposing this bill. You would have heard from previous speakers from the Greens, co-leader James Shaw, Julianne Genter and Russell Norman, who've all talked about the reasons, which is around the lack of enforceability of the labour and environmental so-called protections in this bill and the insidious investor-state dispute mechanism. So let's look at the so-called benefits to the New Zealand economy that this deal will bring. Too many times this government has announced something that was supposed to be a good deal, but which has later flopped. And too often the analysis has been around the short-term view of what constitutes economic efficiency, and it leaves the people behind. And I guess the Sky City deal is a classic example. Another sad case of this was when the government awarded the Kiwi Rail contract to a Chinese company, gutting the rail side workshop in Dunedin and degrading the industrial capacity of this nation. And the fact that this government thought that that was good economic policy and thinks that this deal is good economic policy should have members across the House extremely worried. The investor-state dispute process is also of concern. It has the potential to impose a number of unplanned costs and threatens the sovereignty of our country. Consider the recent case of Bilcon versus Canada, where the Canadian government was sued by a global mining company for $300 million in damages for daring to put in an environmental review. And there's been more cases where environmental, labour and cultural rights have come up against the profit imperative, and frankly they've lost. And the IDS provisions are too threatening to New Zealand's sovereignty and imposes, in the Green Party's view, an unacceptable risk. The Australian Productivity Commission's review on trade agreements concluded that the investor-state dispute settlement process has created, and I'll quote, potentially large unfunded contingent liabilities dependent on decisions by international arbitration tribunals, and that the costs to defending these decisions were, quote, unknown, unfunded, and likely to be substantial, end quote. I'd also like to talk about workers' rights and how this bill has the potential to exacerbate an already bad problem of labour rights. The Greens, we stand up and will defend workers' rights both here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, but also around the world. And South Korea has a particularly bad problem with migrant farm labour abuse. And in 2014, Amnesty International released a report describing the industry in Korea as rife with exploitative practices. Now, this bill does contain a very nice chapter with some protocols around labour standards, but as my co-leader has already pointed out, they're neither binding nor are they enforceable. And according to a recent report in May 2015 by Channel News Asia, who quoted National Human Rights Commission of Korea investigator Yuk Seong-chul, who said, making sure the Korean agricultural sector remains competitive is a priority for authorities. But he also said drastic changes to immediately improve pay and conditions for workers may not be welcome or sustainable. So there are essentially, there are essentially already incentives for migrant labour abuse in South Korea, and they will be strengthened by if they have to compete with New Zealand in what is our most competitive area, agriculture. So we are big fans of trade agreements, but they must bring mutual benefits for everyone. We support trade agreements that respect sovereignty, Mr. Shearer, and we support them that have respect for human rights, for labour standards, and I would have thought Labour would support that, and the promotion of sustainability. There is too much at risk in this trade deal, and so we will be opposing this bill.